Welcome to the show about all things making music, from the creative process and workflow to gear and recording techniques. I'm your host, Brian Funk, musician, producer, Ableton certified trainer, and author of the 5-Minute Music Producer. Let's learn to become better music makers. Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. My guest today is Sebastien Heintz, who makes music as Oversea. His new album, Beyond, is an electro-acoustic ambient sound journey. Sebastien and I discuss his creative process and the new album. We get into using Ableton Live as an instrument, as well as finding creative flow and tapping into the source. Sebastien put together a download of Ableton Live effects and sounds that he used on the album, and you can download them for free in the show notes. Please welcome Sebastien to the Music Production Podcast. What's up, Sebastien? Welcome aboard. Great to have you.
Thank you so much, Brian. So happy to meet you and be here tonight with you.
I'm very happy to have you.
Today for you, it's tonight for me. But
yeah, we have a little time difference. You're in Portugal. I'm on Long Island, New York. So yeah, we've got an ocean between us, but so much in common, so much to talk about. So it's great to
for sure
get to it. Congratulations on the new record, Beyond.
Thank you. It's just been out a few weeks and it's already so. I've been so blessed and touched by the way it's been welcomed. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I've been listening, over the last few weeks just to familiarize myself. But today in particular, I was kind of telling you, I was, it was Monday morning, rushing to get to work, and the hectic, speed of life. And I got in the car and I put your record on, and it was just a great exhale. It was,
Oh my
and
God.
I had such a nice ride. It was just refreshing and put me in a great place to start the day. It was pretty much about the length of the drive, a little bit longer, so I didn't get the whole thing in, but it was, just really nice moods, some nice soundscapes, and also, to do music like this that's very ambient, I guess you would say, like in nature, and there's a lot of melody, there's a lot of nice texture in there, so there's a lot going on. I think, more than a lot of ambient music often has, chord changes and things like that. So I found it pretty interesting on that level too. It's really cool.
Thank you so much, and I feel blessed because I feel like the mission is accomplished. If you had like a moment to just zone out and kind of rest while you were driving to work, it's kind of it's a good way to feel it. So yeah, so happy about that.
We could use more of that kind of stuff in the world, probably, for a lot of us.
For sure,
Right.
and that's also why I wanted to create this type of album. And you were mentioning ambient, and already there's so much to uncover, but I don't come from ambient music at all, and at the start of my music journey, career, whatever. And but I wanted to create a longer piece, like a longer album with this type of space, and being able to counterbalance our culture and social medias and just the fast in which we live in at the moment. So it feels very good that you're mentioning the car drive this morning after you're rushing out to get to work. It feels good.
Yeah, and as I'm talking to you now, this is actually the first time I've seen your image in full screen, whereas before it had the split screen as we were setting up. But I'm seeing your layout, and I guess you're in your studio.
Yeah.
And there's like a balance happening right now in the shot. On the left side of you, you've got all your electronics and synthesizers. And
That's
on the
true.
right side, we've got a bunch of guitars.
Yeah.
And a
That's-
couple other
that's right.
things, I think, hiding in there. And I think that's a nice blend of what we're hearing, it sounds like, on the record.
Yeah. So funnily enough, so I come from guitar. I started playing music when I was 10, and I was fascinated by guitar, and I grew up playing guitar, so it was a very different world than what very different music than what I'm doing today. And I grew up in Switzerland, in the French-speaking part of Switzerland, and I was a fan of a French guitar player called M, just the letter M, and he's kind of a guitar hero in France. And he was really my mentor as a kid. You know, I was really passionate by guitar, and when I started playing guitar, quickly started playing piano as well, and then I got my first Node stage, which had a few synth sound, but I was not into ambient. And more recently that I got into synthesizer. I was in London and I fell in love with the Korg MS-20 that's over
Mm.
there, and
Got the same one.
yeah,
The kind of newer mini one that they made.
yeah. They're so good.
Yeah.
And I was in the studio in Teliard Studio in London, and they had the old one, and that kind of started my love for synthesizer, which then brought me into a bit more of an experimental approach to music in general, and it just also allowed me to not give a rest, not just get away from guitar, but also open my musical knowledge and mind and
Mm.
experiment as well with synths, and that's kind of how I ended up doing Beyond, or all the work I'm doing now was just that particular moment in time where I fell in love with the Korg MS-20, and just it was just a snowball effect from that very moment. And funny enough, you're mentioning guitar is when I was almost finished with the new album, and I didn't put much guitar in it, and I was actually about to finish the mixes, and something didn't feel quite like me, and I was reflecting on it, and I thought, I think it's missing guitars, and that's
Mm.
how I got back into it. It was the very last week before I was sending it to master, and I added all the guitars that are now in the album, and it just felt finished. When I added the guitars, it felt like I'm whole, as
Mm.
this album could be, and as I wanted to present it. So thank you, because yes, the guitars were not supposed to be there, because Oversea as a artistic project was always about my synth experimental side and less about my guitarist side. But I'm happy to merge the two together now, so I'm glad you're mentioning it.
Mm. It's interesting how I've found this a lot in my own path and in a lot of artists I've followed and spoken with, how these things kind of come together eventually. A lot of times we go off on these paths and we take, I was the same way, guitar player, rock bands,
Mm.
and not much in the way of keys or synthesizers really at all in any of the music that we played. And then it sort of crept in a little bit. And little, I think that what really excited me was hearing kind of chiptune sounds in synthesizers, like putting just a square wave and be like, it sounds like Nintendo.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool, and it had a lot of nostalgia from my childhood. And that started getting me kind of interested in it. And it was plugins, of course, at first. And I had no idea why anyone would need to buy a physical synthesizer because of how much you could do with plugins, until I got my hands on a physical synthesizer, and I was like, oh, I get it. Turning the knobs, controlling, interacting with it like like a like an instrument, I guess, like a machine that you can play with. But then a lot of my music started to go in that direction, and it had been a little while since I'd picked up the guitar, which has really always been the way I interact with music the most, and I understand music the most through the guitar. And I'm kind of at that point too, where now the blending and incorporating and almost doing synthesizer like things to my guitar, and guitar like things to my synthesizers. Running, we were talking about, I've got the Chroma console here, running it through guitar pedals. It's been a lot of fun. So it's nice to hear how there's like a sort of 360 kind of thing happening for you.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a conversation between our different sides and our different kind of love for sounds. I don't know if it feels like this for you,
Mm.
but like you were saying, the guitar inspired you to play synth differently, and synth inspired you to play guitar differently, and I feel the same way. And it just opened up so much in my music, getting into synth, and also just wanting to have my guitar sound different. I was, I don't know, I've been playing for 15 years, playing guitar for 15 years. And although I was always passionate by different sounds and pedals, I was like very early on, I had pedals and I was messing around with,
Mm.
with pedals. But just to kind of, the synth world is another kind of metaverse out there, and when you get into it, it kind of start this conversation with the rest of you. I mean, it did for me in my case. It started a conversation for me in the guitar world as well. It just like wanted to treat it differently. You were saying that, and I think it's one of those moments where you feel like you're evolving as a musician also, and it's one of those beautiful way to kind of counter any plateau effect that we can have at some point, because you know how it is when we've been playing for so long. Sometimes it you can kind of feel in a rut, and just finding ways to rediscover your instrument by using other instrument to inform this conversation is, I mean, it was a big part of my journey, and my musical journey, because I don't really like the word career, but in everything I do today has been inspired by how I got away from guitar to come back to it with a different angle,
Mm.
So it's funny.
Yeah, it does. I find that a lot with all the different ways I guess I interact with making music now, which I'm guessing you probably have, coming from guitar, I would imagine you played in um, probably groups and bands and um, learned making music that way. And then you get into sequencing and you get into these other methods of where it's more recorded based and you're writing that way.
Mm.
Um, it's so nice, I guess, when you get down those roads a little bit to realize, like, okay, today I could, and this is also the source of a lot of my struggle and procrastination, in that I don't know which one I want to pick to start with today, but I could start with the guitar, old style, make a song that way, or maybe on a MIDI controller, or maybe a sequencer. And there's always a fresh way to approach it when you have some of these different things going on. But which can also, like I said, be the problem too. You have too many options, too many
Yeah,
choices.
for sure. We can get lost in the kind of the geek world, and just having too many options. Most recently, I had to, my computer died, so I had to redo my whole
Oh no.
Ableton and I had to go through all my plugins and I think I probably didn't reinstall all of them. And it's just a statement of, sometimes we get so many of those sounds and plugins we don't even use because we're so used to what we use all the time, and we get distracted. So a lot of beyond of this album and my most recent work was about just trying to get away from the the plugin crazy mind, like getting more plugins and just trying to be a bit more creative with what I have. Even with my synth. I do have some dream synth in mind, but for now, this is my collection, and I try to be as creative. And I think this is the way to kind of also, to me, it was about to help me finish stuff. It's about what because we asked the question about what we are missing or what we want to add to our collection arsenal in a way. But in the end, it's how can we use what we have to be creative and to sound different than what we did 2 years ago, or how to evolve from that. And this road was very inspiring to me, and it still is, because yeah, some pedals on my board. I have I think it's the DL4, the Line 6 DL4 delay that I had for, I don't know, 15 years, but I'm still trying to find ways to to be inspired by it and be excited
Mm.
when I do something with it. It's not always the case, but I think it's good to have this kind of almost gratitude like reverence towards what we have and almost treating it like, yeah, a gratitude thing and being creative with this to me was a big thing a few years ago. Mm.
I like that thought process, the gratitude of it, because we have, like you said, there's so many plugins, there's so many pieces of gear. It's so easy to get gear now, and if you like it, you keep it, you send it back, you can return it.
Yeah,
It's easy to dabble in a million different things, sell it on eBay if you don't want it. But that feeling, yeah, when I was younger and like I just got a guitar, I was like, wow, like I have a guitar now and I can
yeah,
play it. And it was so exciting. But when you can download a new plugin every 20 minutes, I follow a lot of blogs and things
right.
about the gear and, and I love keeping on top of it. But it's like there's always a new free thing, a new free thing. And you're like, oh, cool. And you want to get it. But every time you do, I guess it does take away a little bit of that feeling of gratitude because you don't get to really spend the time with stuff like we used to.
Yeah,
Because you're on to the next thing and oh, how's it sound? Okay, cool. And then you just move on and try the next one instead of getting lost in it a little bit and some
mm.
appreciation.
And that's the beauty of it, and it's a lot about what I'm doing now is getting lost in the sound, and because I have this very almost meditative approach and contemplative approach to sound, which has kind of always had, but it's been even bigger now over the last few years. But it's just that time we give ourselves to get to know a sound or just experiment it in different ways and almost I'm using it almost to get into trance, sometimes, but simple
Mm,
sound, meditative sound, and yeah, this thing get lost into sound is very inspiring to me. And it's going back to the conversation we had about the Chroma console just a few minutes ago. I got mine 6 months ago before I got on tour, and I just got it, set it to what I needed to do for the tour, but I don't even know how to use probably 60% of it, 70% of it, because now it's
mm,
controlled by MIDI on stage, so it does everything it needs to be doing. But that's about it. And I was thinking about that a few days ago. I was like, I think I should spend more time with this pedal because I mean, my 12 years old kid, the version of myself 20 plus years ago, would have been so excited, and would have spent
mm.
like an entire summer digging into the sound. And sometimes it's like that. You're just going back to that gratitude. I'm like, wow, all of what I have today is so much that I could have dreamed of a few years ago, Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, still inspired to get new stuff because it's
Yeah,
cool to
it's new
keep it
stuff. It's fun.
yeah, keeping it fun and sometimes trading stuff, getting out of a rut by selling a synth and getting a new one or whatever. Just it's good, but I think the Instagram culture and YouTube. I'm a big YouTube kid,
Mm,
and I had to unfollow a lot of musical gear pages because you always feel like you're behind and you don't have enough stuff. And now I'm trying to get back to this 12, 13 years old of myself who spent like month with one pedal and could get lost in the sound. I think what you said is really resonating with me. This idea.
mm. Yeah, I used to really get to know the things I had, really, because there was no other choice.
Mm,
I mean, I've fantasized about all the things we have now and all the capabilities we have, but I got a lot of creative work done trying to figure out ways around it. And I do think I've over bloated my computer. I'm sorry your computer went down. Um, I do have this kind of twisted fantasy of my own, though. of that happening so I could just start fresh, like no samples, no plugins, and just add things in as I see fit and I need. Um, I actually got a lot of use out of a plugin uninstaller. I paid a couple bucks for one I found somewhere, and it searches. I originally got it for duplicates, but then I was kind of like, like I never use this one. I never use this one, and got a little kind of disciplined on saying like, if I'm not using it, it's getting in my way. It's distracting me, really. So, yeah, the too much choice thing is we do that to ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, we do, and I think
Mm.
it's just almost a overall social thing in general, and that we have in our lives. I don't want to get into like capitalism or whatever, but we just tend to accumulate, and I'm also a big fan of Rick Rubin, and I just love the way he used to say that what he wasn't producing music, it was reducing music. And I always like that kind of
Yeah.
mindset, even though Beyond took me 2 years and was a lot about layerings, and it was a lot of sculpting the sound, and it required that amount of presence and but yeah, I also try to get away from accumulating sound or accumulating plugins, because in the end, I'm looking at my plugin list. I have my favorite um, folder in Ableton, and it's really only what I'm using, mostly
Mm.
98% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And that is a cool way to think of it, reducing music.
Yeah.
Um, I I don't think I mentioned this maybe, but I teach high school English and teach writing, and so often the question, if I have a writing assignment, is how many words, how long does it have to be?
Mm,
And I hate this question so much because it implies more words are better. So
it does.
if I say 300 words, then you're just going to put words on the paper until you get to 300, and more is better. Sentences get long-winded. But in reality, it's about how few words can you do it in. That's
Mm.
what I want it to be. And I think even musically, kind of occurred to me as you were speaking, we almost feel like it needs to have lots of tracks. It needs it's almost impressive to say like, yeah, this last song I produced has 96 tracks, and 72 of them are vocals, and all
Yeah.
of these kind of things, which sometimes is great. But I'm really getting into the idea of like, how few can I use also, because almost like the gear, I can't appreciate all these little sounds and these little textures if there's 100 other little sounds and textures dancing around it at the same time. And um, I think you do a really nice job on your record of allowing us to take in these sounds and appreciate them. There's a lot going on. I'm not saying that it's simple by any means, but you've got a way of allowing the things to have their time and get some presence with the sound so we can listen to them. Like, yeah, it's an interesting, that wind chime sound you have is playing and then it reverses, and we can really hear it where it's not getting kind of washed away in the crowd of sounds.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'm so glad it comes out that way, because when I was preparing the promo for the album, and I was also prepping for this podcast, I went back into the sessions, and I was looking at some of the songs, and I was like, Jesus Christ, there's a lot of things I don't even know that were in. And and it was, my whole thing when I was producing was about making it as I wanted I wanted it to feel like a living organism, like you would go in a forest. Nothing feels
Mm.
like too much, nothing feels like too less. It feels perfect as it is. Yet everything is evolving, and everything is kind of informing the next move and the next little plant or the next little whatever living organism there is. And that's what I wanted to do, but it also required sometimes yeah, layers. And I'm thinking of it, one of the track is it's called Down Here. I was just listening to it the other day, and it's a lot of track, just for the pads, because I wanted them to feel like something was, yeah, evolving, very living organism, a tapestry of sound that wouldn't feel stagnant. But yet there's yeah, another song feel that's called Here, There, Here. It's called a double name, and it's only really 5 tracks, vocals, a few ambient, and a bass. It's,
Mm.
it sometimes the song requires more, and I think it's a little bit like you were saying about the the assignment, the English assignment. It's it's always about what is in service of the message, the conversation, the song, the art, whatever the sculpture, whatever the convers. I mean the object is about, but it's really about what is serving, you know. And
Mm.
yeah, going back to the sessions, I also found that a lot of what I had done in my session were muted. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. I actually thought of removing stuff. I didn't delete them for some reason, because probably I was like fear of losing the idea, but it was
Yeah.
muted. I was like, oh, I didn't remember muting these, but it's amazing because it really actually gives space for more to happen. So yeah, it was a mix of a lot of work, a lot of detail work, and a lot of letting go as well. Just like, oh, I think this is done as is, you know.
Mm.
So it's a hybrid thing.
Yeah. Yeah, the mute button has been a friend for me. I tend to like to build the stuff up and keep adding and adding. And then when it's time to do mixing or even really just arranging, it's almost like, what's the least amount I can get away with now?
Yeah.
Where is, because there's some weird paradox that happens. I think guitar really taught me this, where you would think the more guitar layers I put in, the bigger the guitars are going to sound. But it just sounds like a lot of little guitars now
Mm.
inside the music. Whereas if it was just one, you could really hear it and it can be up front and all the little noises and textures and tiny details are very easy to pick up on. But as soon as you start layering them in, there's like a point where, oh yeah, this sounds big, it sounds great. And then you get down the road and you're like, huh, why do the guitars sound so weak?
Mm. Yeah.
And it's because there's too many of them and they're just sort of blurring each other.
Yeah, it's the character of each song, each sound we use.
Mm.
I feel like, and also not. I don't want to feel like a nostalgic person, but I mean, I think in the old days of music, we did that a lot more. You know, just focusing on the sound and getting the right sound from the get go. You know, from the source
Yeah.
had to be good, and we didn't realize so much on the post production. It was really about how can we get this sound to sound good, this guitar, and how can we get the performance as well. I think it was a lot more about the living music, you know. And today we tend, it's probably also this gear thing. We're going back to this conversation. It's we tend to forget about just the performance and the humanity of it, you know, just putting ourselves into the music. It's so easy to comp stuff, to edit, and to get that perfect take, and we all know about that. But what if it's a little bit wrong? What if it's a little bit out of time? And what if it's not being duplicated? Even my some of the synth line, um, bass synth I'm doing in one of the song. Originally, it was just one loop it was a MIDI clip that I looped, and also at the final stage of the album, of mixing the album, I thought I think I should just replay that through the same synth, but not having it played as a MIDI clip, played 4 times, but just play it. And even though it might not change everything, it will give some humanity to it. And to me, it was a lot about that, especially with this album. I wanted it to feel, yeah, a living organism. So I didn't want it to feel too perfect. I think we have a lot of perfect around us, or
Yeah.
pseudo perfect, you know. And just the way you were saying it, the more guitars might not be the best. And I'm guilty of it too, you know. I get booked to record guitars remotely, and my tendency is to send 20 guitars for one song. And then I'm listening back to the song once the artist is finished producing it, and they only send back, I mean, the finished song is only 2 guitars I sent, and I'm like, oh, wow, you're right, that was enough. I need to go back to channeling my Rick Rubin a little bit, you know. But it's always so interesting.
I think that's a cool thing to do. Like you said, playing like the MIDI clip out, you know, in that case, are you performing it or are you just letting it play through?
Performance.
So the timing is going to change a little, subtle velocity differences, and all of that. You might not notice, but I do think you feel. I really do.
I think so.
I think we our brain sort of recognizes when something's kind of being like photocopied over and over again and spit back out, compared to when it's not, and it's a little more fluid.
Yeah, and I think it works for certain genres, or even for certain songs. I'm not it might not be genre specific, but some certain songs feel good when it's very, very tightly repetitive, and it can also get you into a trance state. You know, it's very interesting how we can use this to inform brain waves. But in general, especially with this album, I really wanted it to feel fluid and just very, very, very nature-like. So that's why I really took as much time as possible to make sure I was playing most of the stuff and not just duplicated the MIDI clips, which is not bad in itself, but that was my kind of memo and my kind of momentum at that time.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, obviously, I think probably almost everybody listening now does that on some level, and it's great. You can duplicate out those MIDI clips and hear what the song sounds like over time without having to play everything. And you can, like you did, you can go back and edit if you want. But yeah, sometimes it works too. Maybe we're in a time too where we want a little more humanity. We're seeing a lot of computer-generated, AI-generated stuff all the time. And it is nice to know you're getting something alive and breathing. And something even just about the fact that you decided to take the effort to perform it when you could have just done that. It's that little bit of sweat in the creative process, I guess, that is kind of nice to know that some effort went into it, that it wasn't just the technology taking over.
Yeah.
I'm appreciating that much more these days than ever before.
Yeah, same, especially, with the rise of the AI world. And I think we want more human behind the stuff we read, we listen, we watch, even our emails. Sometimes I'm like, this feels like it's a chat GPT email, you know. I'm like, who's the real person behind this email? I don't want to send back a chat GPT email, you know. It's like we're not having a conversation, it's just our different AI machine or whatever.
I get so many of those. Just send me the prompt.
Easier.
Courteous email asking for, whatever. Because it feels deceitful. And I get it for the podcast a lot. I get these emails that are just AI and they fool me, and I get upset because it used to be all of the, I don't know, like PR people, I guess, are sending me emails that they're sending to every podcast. They're just blasting them out. And I could tell in the past, this is just one of these emails. There's
Mm,
nothing personal in it. We love your podcast. And it would say music production podcast in like a different font. And then the rest of the email counts on. But now it's saying things like, oh, your Sebastien conversation was so interesting. How you guys talked about the emergence of electric guitars meets electronic instrument. You know, it gives me a little bit of thing in there that is very specific detail about some conversation. And then they ask me if I want to have like, you know, like an auto mechanic on the show. It's like so unrelated after that. Like I find that really frustrating. And those are though they're just an easy delete. I mean, I'm not getting a person. I feel like they're not expecting me to get back to them. They're not waiting for me. Um, but what bothers me about that, I guess, is that there are other people like you, for instance. When we started speaking, you were human. I could tell right away. But as this technology starts mimicking that, I'm afraid I'm gonna start missing it when a real person is writing me something genuine and heartfelt.
for sure.
It's gonna be confusing, and
Yeah,
you know,
it's slowly it starts to creep in, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Even in the music industry, and it's yeah, it's I'm not kind of against it in any way. I think it's beautiful to have the tools to help us
Hmm.
focus on other stuff. But I'm very aware that we are human beings and we are in a living world, and it's especially going back to art. It's about our own expression and our way to experience the world and experience certain. Yeah, I talk a lot about transcendental experiences, but whatever it is, whatever you experience in life, this is what makes people want to listen to music, whether it's gospel, or
Mm.
or electronic music today. It's about who it is to sing this story with sound, with words, with painting, with colors, whatever it is. I think it's for me. This is all about it. Otherwise, it doesn't
Mm.
make sense if I'm not having this devotion for humanity in a way, and to create music for someone who will appreciate it. I'm not making it for the bots. I'm making it for the human beings, and in that way I feel like I have a responsibility towards the people who listen to my music, and the people who will listen, especially because I'm in a specific kind of musical world slash. Yeah, I have this bridge with neuroscience, and I work a lot with meditation, and different type of practices. I feel like it's all about the intention we have in what we do, and I couldn't feel. I couldn't look myself in the mirror if I was not pouring my heart and my soul into the work I'm doing, and taking, I don't know, shortcuts with AI. It wouldn't feel right for me. But again, this is just my point of view. I'm not
Mm.
against it, but in the work I do, I feel like I have to have this devotion, because it makes the experience I hope to give a bit more real, or just a bit more human.
Right.
True, true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I have the problem with the deceit of it, the mimicking of it.
Mm,
But obviously, there's great uses and all of that. But I can see where you're coming from, especially with the style of music you just put out. That you wanted to have that. I'm kind of interested in what you said about like the meditative stuff and the uh, almost like scientific aspect of it that you were getting at. Because also before we started recording, we were just kind of chatting, and you mentioned surfing, and it's something I've liked to do in the past. Though I've had a little time off. I don't know if I'm allowed to label myself a surfer right now, but I love it, and so much of it is that meditative aspect. It's not. I'm like I'm like for surfing, it's not anything other than just enjoying the time doing it. I'm not trying to really get better or compete or anything like that. It's enjoying sitting out on the ocean, and if a wave comes, going with it. But it is one of those things, a lot like music, where when you're doing it, everything else kind of melts away. So you go out there, and whatever's on your mind, whatever's bothering you, you get a break from it. Because there are moments of intensity, in there where you can't be thinking about other things. And that break I find to be really nice because then you get out of the water and now you're on a different angle. You're looking at whatever's going on in life from a new perspective. You're not just stewing in those thoughts that are taking over your mind. Um, so what I was originally thinking was like kind of this idea that there's these meditative qualities to being in the zone of making music too. Um, and there's parallels with that with something like surfing. But I'm kind of interested now where you're going with some of that other stuff you just mentioned.
Oh man, there's so much I want to talk about right
Yeah,
now.
it feels like we just found something.
Well, just to touch on the surf topic, because I think it really is similar to music in a way, is that flow state you're talking about.
Mm,
That very, very unique moment where nothing else exists. And I think this is one of the most beautiful thing we can ever experience as beings, it's like being I don't want to sound too corny or too spiritual woo woo, but it's about being here now, and it really is that feeling. And I think to me, surfing is a lot like you were saying. Is I'm not surfing to be a pro. It's not my path, but I'm surfing to be out in the ocean and just out in the surf. And I think I had some of my most mystical experience out there, in the morning when the light comes out, the sun comes out. It's so magical, and a lot of it is a buffer for me because I've been working a lot in the studio, and when I need that buffer, I find that same flow state that I can have in my studio. But as you said, with a different angle, you're looking at even
mm,
just the way of being in the water and looking at the ocean and looking at the cliffs or the beach wherever you are. But it makes you look at things differently. And for this album and going back to this conversation about meditation and flow, um, I've over the last few years, so much of my music has been about creating soundscapes and spaces almost in music to be able to experience something transcendental or something meditative or something just to rest. I think I wanted to question my own status quo about music. I was in a band. I toured the world with my rock psychedelic band for years, and it was a fun way to look at music, and I am not separating music into better or if it served this or if it doesn't make it better or worse. But today I wanted to make a music that served another part of us, the part that needed rest or needed to, as you were saying this morning, just listening to the song and kind of feel at ease or work on the nervous system in a different way. And also, I've been very um, passionate and did some research in my degree and my master degree, especially around brainwave therapies and how we can
mm,
use music to support support us as living beings and just support our creative states, our rest states, and this was a big part of Beyond, but I think it's just a big part of my music at the moment, and the music I've been doing for with Oversea, this project of mine was a lot more about this type of space than 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 it was before, and today for me, I think the music is is a medicine. Again, I don't
mm.
want to sound too. spiritual woo-woo slash
Right.
corny, but it is a medicine for me, you know. And I think it has been for years. And there are I mean, tons of research that shows how music was a tool in the past and still is, you know. And I've been very intrigued by how therapeutic music can be and how we can use it and bridge the ancestral knowledge with the neuroscience knowledge that we have today and have this bridge and this conversation with the two worlds. And that's often why I say that I do electro-acoustic music, because it's not so electronic, it's not so acoustic, but it's a bit of both. And I think it's a reflection of these two worlds, you know, the ancestral knowledge of music and this magic that we had. Even like when we
Mm.
listen to gospel or the first blues songs, you feel that there's something of the heart and the soul, and it kind of evolved and beautiful. But I'm interested into going back to this and creating these these soundscapes, these spaces. And beyond for me was really a space, you know. I wanted to create a space that you can walk in and maybe have a breath work, maybe have I'm working with also psychologists that work with psychedelic therapies. And you know, I wanted to have this bridge and explore this with music. So this is really where I'm at with the music, and Beyond was created, constructed that way.
Well, the album title makes a lot more sense now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, I understand your um, caveat, I guess, of not to get too spiritual, woo woo, and all that. Um, but it is something I think we kind of can't deny that something is happening.
Mm,
And if you're at a concert and you're having this kind of communal experience with all these strangers, like when you're there, it's real. Something's definitely going on. And I know we don't have all the data and it's hard stuff to collect data on, but I don't think you really need it to know that it's happening. It's very interesting to find out what it actually is and the science behind it. But yeah, it is very therapeutic and medicinal in a lot of ways. It's maybe not the same as taking like I don't know, like a pill to make a headache go away or something. But it has real effects. I mean, I think my life would be a lot different without that release. All those times I've come to make music and take time away from life and get a breather to not be ruminating on thoughts and caught up in the cycle that just, you know, to um, think about just the way our minds work, where we have a thought and you get on it like it's a train and it could be total fiction. They're mad at me, that text message came out,
yeah.
and you just suddenly you're off to the races and you're in this whole other place, and it could be just totally made up in your own head. But if I could add up all the times something like a music session took me out of that and brought me back and gave me a little perspective, I think that's probably very significant, and I'd probably be a much different person and have much different relationships, I'm sure. I'd be much less tolerable of a person without all of that going on. There's something real going on there. And surfing is like that too, that gives you that. And surfing is really interesting in that it takes a lot of these kind of abstract concepts like flow and um, those types of states, and it's real physical. Like you have to literally ride the wave. You can't fight the ocean.
No,
Like you'll never win.
no.
And when you work with the ocean, it's almost easy. It's fluid. It's you just kind of coast. But when you try to fight it, it just smashes you.
Yeah, again, it feels like a conversation, right? It's like you have an information coming at you, and it's how will you respond to it, and how will you flow with it. And
Mm.
it's so funny that we're having this conversation because I was part of a project called Waves of Life 2 years ago, which
Waves of life.
Waves of Life, yeah. And it was all about that, how art or surfing and all this type of concept can actually be teachings for our work, for our lives in general. And
Mm.
and also I'm just making the connection that one of the song of the album started when I was working on this Waves of Life, because it felt so inspiring to me that to take this concept of being in the flow. I think, as you said, it's a very um, um, bizarre concept to touch on, and unless you're a musician or you're an artist, or you're maybe you in certain type of sport, I'm sure you get that as well. It's like you get in that zone, then you understand what it is. But most of the time we are far away from being in the flow. And and this is what's been interesting to me. It's trying to help the process of being in the flow, and kind of talk about it, and uh, uh, be an advocate for it. It's like this is places we can go to, and
Mm.
this is places that we are allowed to go to, because I think there's also uh, um, yeah, the acceptance of it. But so anyway, I'm getting lost in the thought of it, but it's just such an interesting topic. And you were saying, the thoughts train and stuff like this. I'm a big meditation guy. I do 2 meditations a day. I do yoga every day, so it's a big part of my
Mm.
life. But in the end, it's only to serve me being a better person, a better musician, and just being a more I don't know what you said, but it was very funny the way you said it about music. Like, if you had a music, you would feel so different. And
Yeah.
it's the same for me. And I think music is also a type of meditation, and we have all these labels around meditation and around what meditation should be or should look like. And I think flow, in a lot of the moment we can feel flow, is meditation at its best. Like, if you get into a sound on your synth, and you get in that moment where 2-3 hours pass by, and you record something, and it feels just right, and you didn't see those 2 hours pass by. This is the isn't this the most beautiful thing? you know
Mm.
it's so medicinal for yourself, and once you finish the piece of music, it might be for someone else. And this is the type of exchange I'm really interested in. And it's the conversation between the surf and the surfer, the musician and the music. And it's all about that's part of the work I'm trying to achieve.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. That is often the feeling I'm chasing, is the getting lost in it, and where everything kind of melts away, the time fades. There is no time really. There's nothing. There's just what's happening in the
Mm.
moment, and um, it always is refreshing, and it's fun. The hard parts of it even are enjoyable, and uh, I think that's where I want to be when I decide to start. And can't always get there for one reason or another, but when you tap into it, it is just quite a cool place to be. And
Yeah.
and you almost don't know you're there, and and as soon as you realize you are, you run the risk of popping out of it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But
It's it's a fine line.
yeah,
I think there's interesting musician and composer that brought this aspect into music. I think I'm thinking of John Cage, you know, in the I think
Hmm.
it was it the 40s, 50s, where he started to take classical music into a new direction. And I'm also thinking, I think that guy name is Le Mount Young, something like this. Le Mount Young, I think is a Canadian guy. Same area of John Cage era. But I remember seeing one of the music partitions and music sheet for one of the song, and it's basically two notes. I think it's a B
Mm.
and an F sharp, and the only indication that you have is play for a long time, and you only have those two notes, and it's kind of this is the kind of concept I'm very interested in, you know, as a composer and as a musician, and just as a being as well, as a meditation practitioner, whatever. It's just like having this experience that we are living beings and that we also are experiencing time into different in different ways. And music is such a beautiful way to get into it and kind of feel time um disappear and come back. And I think the work of these guys, yeah, the minimalist guys in those days, I don't know if we can really call them the minimalist, but those guys, John Cage, Lamont de Young, those type of composers, they are a good entry into this type of flow state. If it's hard
Mm.
to experience this state, I found them really inspiring, and I found they were a very good way to practice it in the first place. Just like playing two notes on a keyboard and waiting for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes, and suddenly you don't hear the same B and F sharp the same way you've heard it like for the past 4 minutes. It suddenly starts to shift, and
Mm.
you get into that little bit of an interstellar feeling, you know, and
Mm.
everything to dissipate. Anyway, so I think this is a very beautiful way to experiment different aspect of our human self. That's something I'm very passionate about.
It is funny that time gets perceived differently because it is so steady, right? It's just ticking along, and we use it in music.
Mm.
It's time based, yet you can sort of lose track of it. We feel it differently all the time, um, and sometimes the very repetitive rhythm of the music, the timing takes us there. It because we're so focused on the time, we almost lose it. Like maybe in a way, how if you listen to those two notes playing over time, I guess you start to hear the other frequencies, not just those fundamentals, and they start to come together in new ways, and you notice almost like new sounds within it, new layers of time. Something going on.
New layers of time. I like that. This is a good,
Yeah.
good one.
I want to because this is like we can spend a lot of time here too. But one of the things you mentioned was like using Ableton Live as an instrument,
Yeah.
and I think this is a really fun way to look at it. It's kind of how I got into it. I'd been playing music recording and got into some other DAWs, and always sort of felt like I was making music against it. And what I really loved about recording and all the things I found interesting, all my favorite artists too did this. They experimented with the studio like it was an instrument and played it. And then when I finally wrapped my head around Ableton Live, I was like, oh, the studio is an instrument now. It's part of my creative process. And I got real excited about that. So I'm kind of curious how that is for you, how you use it like an instrument.
Yeah, well, very similar story. I started I started recording music. I was 12, and I was using a very early version of Pro Tools,
Mm.
and then I moved on to Logic Pro because I was in the UK learning. I was in at a music college in the UK, and everyone was using Logic Pro, so I moved on to Logic Pro, and it was more recently I got into Ableton because similar stories. Most of my music inspiration and favorite artists were using Ableton. And first of all, the way I found it so interesting is that, um, especially in the beginning, when you're learning an instrument, you're learning to work with the resistance of the instrument. So if you play guitar, you have the frets and the strings, and there is so many little details of resistance that you have to learn about. And learning Ableton was so different. I mean, to me, it felt like another world than Pro Tools. Like even the way it's presented on the page, everything is on the left. In Pro Tools, and all
Mm.
the input and everything. I mean, the important stuff are on the right in Ableton, and it felt like an instrument in that way for me because it felt like I had so much resistance to learn again, and it felt like I needed to have this. I mean, the word conversation comes up again. It was a very more. It was a lot more of a conversation between what I could do, what I wanted to do, and it was very much in the service of how can I create sound with it. Whereas before it was just serving, you know, Pro Tools was just serving me as a as a studio to record my music, basically.
Mm.
And suddenly Ableton kind of opened up that space, and the little resistance I felt like I feel like I'm holding a guitar, but Ableton was the same, it was learning the resistance of the DAW, but it was an instrument to me around that time already. And then, I was always having like this joke with my best friend, who's an incredible producer again. Also, I was like, I would love to get into modular synth, but I will do that when I'm 50 because before it's too much for me.
Mm.
But what I found in Ableton was exactly what I was looking in modular synth. It's that kind of infinite possibility of choices and way of using the plugins, and it's very more I mean, to me it feels a lot more creative than how Pro Tools felt a few years ago when I was still using it. And the plugin chain and the way you can create plugin racks, it's still very new to me. I still feel like I'm learning the instrument as I go. And I think Beyond was it was a the Ableton Academy for me, you know,
Mm.
because there were places I wanted to go with the psychoacoustics, the places I wanted to go with the music in general and the way I wanted it to feel. Again, I wanted the music to feel like a place, a space you would go into. And Ableton was allowing me to do this, but it was a lot of learning as I was doing it. And again, as I was prepping for this podcast, I was going back to the sessions and realizing that so much of the combinations and so much of how I used the plugins and how they interacted with each other, I could have never done or perhaps never thought of in Pro Tools. And I'm not trashing Pro Tools because I still think it's an amazing DAW for I think it's different instruments, you know.
Yeah.
And today Ableton, it really is in the service of what I'm trying to do a lot more than Pro Tools or Logic had been in the past. And I think to me it's really this modular mind that made it for me, and still
Mhm.
feel like I can explore a lot more. I'm not a big geek guy, so I'm not yet into the Max for Live world, but perhaps that will open up in the next few years. I do have a few devices and stuff, but I'm not so much of a developer guy, or yeah, crazy
Yeah,
intelligent
me neither.
person like that. But I'm very fascinated by it.
Hmm.
But yeah, the instrument for me, yeah, Ableton, the instrument is the modular synth I was looking for,
Hmm.
but a lot
Yeah.
cheaper because I know that.
I think that's what kept me out of modular synths was just financial restrictions, because you can really go wild there. Um, but they have built so much inside Alive that it really does feel like a modular synth. You can drop LFOs and have it modulate anything, and all these
Yeah,
envelope followers, and you get a lot of cool interaction with your music that way.
yeah, and also
Are
I was getting into generative music back like a few years ago, and I was listening to a lot of Brian Eno, and I mean, Ableton was so good for me to experiment this,
mm,
with the LFOs, and you just use a very slow LFO on one little macro that you want to assign to, and to anything, and it just felt very, very um living. Again, I'm going back to
mm.
this word, but it's really what I'm trying to do in music. It does. I don't want it to feel too stagnant or too static, and Ableton is so good for that. So good.
Well, that's what we love about instruments, I think, too. Your guitar, every time you play a single note, it's different. It's
Mm,
it's subtle, but it's different. It's slightly different. And if you watch the notes on the tuner, they're not right on the green dot perfectly in tune. They kind of waver around it.
yeah,
And even hardware synthesizers have a little bit of that, where some days there's something funny going on and they just respond a little bit differently. And you can really program a lot of that stuff in. Like you said, you can decide more now instead of I have an old Moog. It's like the Radio Shack Moog. It was the it's the MG1, the Concert Mate. So it was like a cheaper consumer style synthesizer from the 80s, and it sounds really awesome, but it's a little bit broken. And right now, it's like kind of broken in a cool way where I can get some fun stuff out of it. But I can imagine a little bit further down the road, it's a problem. I think Tape Machine too, where you know, until I had it serviced recently, but before that, it was almost unusable. It was
yeah,
just problems with it. In live, you can decide, all right, I want it to be like, I'm going to take that slow LFO and I'm going to just put it on the pitch of this synth. And it's going to just happen sort of randomly over time, but only this much, you
yeah.
know, N- not to a degree where it ruins the music, but enough where it just helps it breathe a little bit.
Mm,
Um, and the ability to make those decisions is a lot of fun. And I think it does make for some more organic, lively sounding music
yeah.
when you
Organic
start
too.
adding those things up.
Organic is definitely the word, and that's how I use it. I try to use it as organic as possible, and really feels like an extension to the synth for me, Ableton, and
Mm.
it's almost a synth recording station, and yeah, beyond was so much of the songs, there were LFOs and LFOs and LFOs and LFOs triggering small stuff,
Mm.
and everything. It was really my thing at that time, when I was making the album. I want everything to feel like it's moving and like a breathing organism, and the tapestry of sound couldn't feel static. And yeah, Ableton was a game changer in the way that it really opened up my musical perspective onto what I could do. Never thought I could do that before, and also the attention to detail I could go into with Ableton. Um, just just was not in my headspace or in my view before using Ableton, for sure.
Do you work inside the session view at all?
Um,
Like the clip based view?
no, mostly arrangement. Clip
Hmm.
based, I mostly use it for for when I'm taking stuff live. Because I'm also um, uh, I'm an MD for artists, and I also work for them and building Ableton live sessions for certain shows. And I like using the this view for this, but when I'm writing or composing, I'm still old school in the way I
Mm.
like to see the arrangement.
Yeah. I mean, eventually you always have to get there, right? Like if you ever want to export anything, it does need to get to the arrangement. Um, I was sort of just thinking about how when you're in that session view, you're non-linear, so you don't have to think about the timeline as
Mm.
much. And it was something that I got really into early on because I was like, oh, cool, I can have a bunch of musical ideas. And instead of just putting them down and hoping it works and then trying to move them around if they don't, I can just kind of trigger them and jam on the arrangement, which I thought was a really exciting new way to write music in that. Okay, so I've got these ideas swirling in my head. What happens if I go here? And then I go here. And oh,
Yeah,
the drums from the verse will happen in the chorus. That was cool. I didn't expect that. You can kind of mix things up in a fun way. But it's you're still have your timing, but you're off the timeline,
yeah,
right? So it again, like to come back to this concept of like losing track of time, and um, I find that to be a lot of fun to just sort of jamming on these things. And sometimes you're doing it for 20 minutes and discovering how the parts should connect and how things should interact with each other in a totally new way, almost like you would with people playing music with them.
true. Yeah, it's actually now that that you talk about it, first it makes me want to do it. So thank you for the inspiration. A lot more, and also yeah, because I also do some live version of this album, and I also do a lot of sound bath, but I don't like to call them sound bath because I think they are too attached to this specific label of spiritual world sound bath. But I do a
Mm,
modern version of it, and I do use the clip view for that. And to me, going back to that is how you can combine things the way you would have never thought of. But because
mm,
you are in the flow, you are in the moment of it, you think, oh, it's these, I don't know, these synth I have in there. If I put them with waves that I recorded in Portugal and I put them together, how will they interact? And if I add this vocal part I recorded, and these things that I would have never thought about even, yeah, a few years ago, I actually do them. So thank you, because I
mm,
didn't think about it, but I never took them into a composition state. So it's something I'm definitely inspired to do now. Definitely inspired to
mm.
try that.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
you just hit that record button at the top, and anything you do in your session view just gets printed.
Yeah.
And yeah, I often will, when I'm coming up with a song, just sort of do that for a while and then listen back and hear if anything cool happened. And then it's like the reduction process of the production process,
Yeah.
just to figure out, okay, it's not going to be 20 minutes long, but what what are the highlights and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And the surprises, that's the beauty. I
Yeah,
always
it
think
leads
this,
to a lot of that. Yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah, the
surprises.
surprises and feeling like it's not, I don't know where you sit with this, but I feel like when I'm making music, I feel connected to some kind of source, or that's how I like to call it. Some people might call it God or universe or whatever, Buddha. Um, I like to call it the source, and sometimes I feel like I'm not making the choice, not just on my own. I'm kind of guided to make certain
Mm,
choices. And I feel like it's a good way to open up to, maybe it's just a question of surprises. Maybe it's serendipity. I don't know what it is in the end, whatever, if we believe it or not. But it's such a beautiful way to get to expand stuff you wouldn't have thought about. And I think to me, Ableton it is about that in general. I mean, for me, it was a big turning point in recorded music on my journey. You know, everything
mm.
was being questioned in the best way. You know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it does sometimes feel that way. Um, yeah, it's a mysterious thing. There's
Yeah.
it doesn't always feel like you're doing it, and sometimes it feels like you're finding it,
Yeah.
like you have a net and you just caught it,
Exactly. Yeah.
or sometimes it's coming through you. But uh, yeah, I'm okay with like those sort of magical explanations. I think that's I only think that helps me get there, and it sort of takes me off the hook a little bit to
Mm.
kind of think in those terms too. Where well, it's not really me; it's just you find these songs, you find these ideas, or they come to you, or they come through you. Um, it's like you, as long as you're working, it's like having the like TV antenna up, like you can connect,
Yeah.
but you have to sort of do your part of starting things up.
Yeah. 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 For sure. And I mean, I can think of multiple times in this album where I kind of felt like I had to do the music I was hearing in my head. Especially there's one song called "Behind Your Heart." Um, I just had the bass line for this song, which is the big sub. It's kind of the central piece of the album, and I had this bass idea. It was coming from my prophet, and it was sitting in my computer for weeks. There was one Sunday I woke up and I had the whole sound, the whole song, the whole melodies and everything in my head. And it felt like
Mm,
I couldn't have think that myself, you know, it was just, it
mm,
was something else. So I was telling my partner, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have this Sunday without you. I'm so sorry, but I need to get in the studio because this thing is almost like chatter. I can't hear you talk to me. I need to get into the studio and put these ideas into the yeah and record them. And it's this practice of, to me, it feels like it's a practice of being here, being present, but also practicing the music, the synth, the guitar, being able to being in service of those moments, so you can flow and
mm.
just not think about the technicalities of it, you know, and and just be in the flow and know your tool. And also that's one thing, to go back to one of the earlier conversation, is when we accumulate too much stuff, we tend not to know them as much, you know, with the
Yeah,
gear. And when you get to that state where you know your pedals, you know your synth, when these ideas, this inspiration strikes in, you are able to go full in because you don't have to read the manual kind of
yeah,
vibe, you know?
hmm
And this is really what I'm not chasing. Chasing wouldn't be the right word. I don't really like it, but yeah, kind of being ready for when the
hmm
inspiration hits, being ready to deliver, and be in response to this.
yeah. Kind of be in shape,
Yeah.
like musically in shape, and yeah, I find that also just with the actual setup too, understanding how things are working and being aware. I mean, there's nothing that kills a creative moment than like, oh, how's this work? How do I figure this thing out? That's good to,
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny, right? All these things, like you have to be open to it, but you have to also kind of do the practice, the exercise of it. And you got to go with the flow with it. You got to be receptive. You got to also know when to take control. There's so many different kinds of like mindsets you got to get into, and you got to know when to do it and when not to.
I think it's such a beautiful
Yeah,
mirror to what being a musician is, or an
yeah,
artist in general,
yeah.
isn't
Just a
it?
human, really, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
being
yeah.
flexible in those in all those dimensions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's another reason why I think doing this has been very healthy for me as a person. So to get back to some of the stuff you were saying earlier, there's a I can't measure it, you know. It's not like I can step on the scale and see I've lost weight or gained weight, but it's undeniable that all these little things over time have definitely helped me in a lot of levels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is an academy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Academy of life,
It's-
some
yeah.
sort of
It's,
how to be a being.
yeah. It's amazing. Well, the record is awesome. Beyond is definitely worth checking out. And there's a lot of ways you can enjoy it too. I mean, you can sit there and this is like I think this is Brian Eno's definition too, right? Like ambient music where you can as easily deeply pay attention to it as you can almost just let it play.
Yeah,
And it works even on my car ride this morning. Like there were moments where I was really listening. I was like, oh wow, what's going on here? And trying to figure out like the mechanics of it, like how you got those sounds. And then there's other times when I kind of almost forgot it was playing. You know, it was just coloring the experience. Um, so I love music like that, that can do both. There's some music that, you know, as much as I love it, like I can't put on at certain times. And um, this kind of music, what you've done with Beyond is it's very flexible, to use your word as well, for a lot of situations.
thank you. Well, I'm so glad. Thank you for. It's so great to have a conversation around those topics because I mean, as you can see, I'm very passionate about those topics, and
Yeah.
and Beyond was a reflection about all of this. I wanted to create a, a, a full arc, you know, a full transcendental arc, but also being able to dip your toes and just play one song that you like, or just one song for a certain moment of your life. But still, if you want to have a full introspective or psychonautic experience you can have with the album. So
Mm.
yeah, thank you so much for this word flexibility because kind of
It's your word.
yeah, thank you.
well, well, cool. So if people look up Oversea Beyond, they'll find it
Yeah,
pretty much everywhere, it seems like, right?
yeah,
Um, I your website I got here, h-music.ch, right?
yeah.
Where
That's my
people can
label. Yeah, yeah.
kind of find like the overview of stuff.
All the music, all
Um,
the different project, but yeah, mostly focusing on Oversea right now, which yeah, as you know, in an artist career, you have different iteration of your
mhm,
work, and I think Oversea is the most aligned for me right now. So this is the
mm.
path for me
Yeah,
at the
it
moment.
sounds like it's speaking to you. Yeah, I really see it's the connection through everything. It's pretty cool how you found all these and some of these different aspects too with the brain and the science and the nature. Yeah, I mean, science and nature are sometimes seen as opposing forces, but I think it's probably more just the mechanism of nature in a lot of ways.
Exactly, and yeah,
Mm,
I don't see the difference so much these days.
mm. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing this. This is awesome.
Of course, thanks for having me, Brian. So much fun.
Yeah, and thank you to our listeners for sticking with us. I'll definitely check out Oversea Beyond. You won't regret it. A lot of cool music, great vibes, energy, all that stuff, which I'm sure you probably know just based on this conversation. So thanks a lot. Have a good day. Thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast. If you want to help support the show, the best thing you can do is tell a friend, someone you think that would enjoy the show. I'd also love it if you could leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to support my work, you can go to brianfunk.com. I've got tons of Ableton Live packs, tutorials, samples. You can check out my book, The 5-Minute Music Producer, which gives you 365 short music-making activities to help you get started, stay inspired, and finish more music. And there's also the Music Production Club, where you get my latest releases as soon as they're finished. It gives you access to a community of like-minded people who are making music and sharing ideas. You can share your music, find new collaborators, and participate in our live meetings where we set up some kind of musical challenge and then make music together and share our results at the end. That's the Music Production Club. It's a lot of fun, and you can find that and everything that I do at brianfunk.com. Thanks again for listening to the show, and have a great day. I'm so sad the end's here again.